Mike.
I'm Ron.
We're here. There were 4 at one point.
Oh, were they just like, where was it awkward that I wasn't here?
Well, now there are 2. It's just I don't think it always reads it, and sometimes people come and go, and different people are.
Were they just like, where was it awkward that I wasn't here?
Well, now there are 2. It's just I don't think it always reads it, and sometimes people come and go, and different people are watching at different times. So give us a shout out in the chat
and letting you guys know who we are. So when we are back together, you might be able to be like, Mike, man, that Bible passage, or that time that you got water in your eye.
Did I get water in my eye?
I don't know. It's going to be one of those conversations. So our deep dive is getting to know your youth leaders deeper.
Agreed. It's very warm in here.
It's very warm. My glasses are rimmed.
I'm not ready. Oh, there's Sarah. Sarah sounding off. You should post in the olden time live chat so we know who's all watching and what's going on. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll get right into it. So, all right.
So we can answer both of these questions together. What were you appealing?
I'm very appealing.
Is that from youth group the first Sunday?
No. So last Sunday I helped out on a 7-on-7 tournament on Sunday, kind of the afternoon.
Football. Okay.
And I didn't wear sunscreen, so I was very burned right there. It was brutal, but it's all good. So there was a lot of shade at both places where the junior high boys and the high school boys were. So no problems for me.
I'm glad that you got that taken care of. My first question for you, I'll ask you and I'll go second, is how did you get to Parkview?
Okay, so you need to give me a little more. So is it the first time or working here or the second time or the third time?
Wow. Let's get to how you got here as a child and then how you got your job here the second time.
Mike DeWard was born in Mason City, Iowa, and my parents are both Dordt College alumni. And what you need to understand from that sort of comment is Dordt College is affiliated with the Christian Reformed Church of America, or what is it, CRCA? There you go. No. RC. It's something like, anyways, which we actually go back to every Easter. They moved down to Iowa City where Dad got another degree in computer science. And we attended a wonderful Reformed church called Trinity. It's in Iowa City, or what it was right in that summer, and they didn't open again. And so during that time, my parents started to a couple of different ones, but we really we came here, settled here, and live that. You gotta love it. People are here in the office, so our wildly unstable internet connection is wildly unstable still.
Yeah, very.
So, anyways, unstable still.
Yeah, very.
So, anyways, so we checked out a bunch of different churches, and this is the one we settled on. I think they really are here, and Niall Hefner was the junior high pastor. And so, yeah, that was the first time. And so I was here in 4 years, and I would still say that this was my home. And when breaks happened, I was here. This is where I was coming from and coming to, and that sort of stuff. And then I got married right out of college. And when we did that, Heather had another year left at UNI. And so we attended Prairie Lakes Church for a year. Okay. And that's when I started youth ministry. So that's my first group. And I had a group of 8th grade boys who are now 2 years removed from college. I'm pretty confident.
You're old.
I'm old. I've been doing this a fair amount of time. And then after that year, we moved back. And when I came back, then the youth pastor, junior high youth pastor at the time, was Julia. I went to school with her. she needed an assistant. I needed a little steady income, and this place is near and dear to me. So I ended up working here for like 6 years, 5 years, something like that. And then when Marshall was born, we took a year off, and that translated 2 years off because of football. Okay. I started to do more football stuff at the upper levels. That required some more time, and so I ended up with 2 years off. And then there was some instability here at the church within the youth ministry, and I came back during that time. So this is year 3 for me because Marshall is turning 5. So Marshall turned 2, and that's when I got my job here as the junior high youth pastor, and then we're now in year 3. So sweet. How about you? How did you end up in Iowa at Parkview?
I ended up at Iowa. We'll get to that. My wife and I were engaged. I was a crazy person and like not stable in my faith. My wife definitely was. So she broke up with me at church, at our home church, and it was called Wheaton Christian Center. She broke up with me right in front of the church, and we went into service. And yeah, it was great. I cried.
Did you have to sit by each other after she broke up with you?
We definitely did. I'm very resilient. And
she's like, we're not eating lunch after you broke up.
Well, she was visiting out of town. Connie was already living here. So we have a friend group. Okay. And we were all at church together. We had lunch. And I was like, please love me. And we got back together. And slowly but surely, I was like having this conversation with my mom. And she's like, yeah, you need to grow up. And I showed up here at Iowa at midnight with a ring and a proposal. Proposed to my wife.
Wait, so you were broken up for like approximately 8 hours?
Or approximately like 8 hours, and Olive Garden fixes everything.
And then you got engaged?
No, we started dating a little bit more. I became more serious with my commitment, showed up with a ring, married her in December 23rd, because we're crazy like that, get married right before Christmas Eve. We were going to Veritas for a little bit. And Veritas, it's a really cool church, but just the responsibilities we already had 2 children. So we were college age, but life looks a little bit different. Connie was like, we need a different church. So we were literally sitting right where Trader Joe's would have been. And we were like, church services that have an 11 o'clock time. And Parkview came up, and Connie's like, I don't know what Parkview is, but we're going. And we sat in the atrium for a few months, and then we met Doug Schillinger. We got postmarital counseling.
Yep.
Yeah, D. Schill did my postmarital counseling. And then, long story short, my wife started working here, and then I'm working here.
Hi, Connie. We're learning about Ronnie and about you guys. Okay, Lauren, you're not fired yet, but we're thinking about it, expenses. We're 9 minutes in.
And they're late.
Just kidding. I don't care.
Google got me here. Google's next to God.
I understand what you're saying. Just
Google has steered me into some great places.
Google can steer you into anywhere you want to go. It's not like it's personally like, here's the church.
Top search. And so Googleness, godliness.
Yes, in case you didn't know, we are still in the, so it's a little bit different angle. So we've got bookshelf here. This is our file angle. So we've got bookshelf here. This is our file. Look at, I'm pretty confident Meg drew this. And that's a thing.
Random Christmas photos from Christmas party.
Yep.
In-N-Out Burger from Todd. Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
And we nailed it. This is over there is last year's calendar, in case you were wondering. This upcoming year's is over there. Just for the record, if you guys ever want to come visit me in my office, I get bored, and then I get crazy and I go wander around in church. But you're always more than welcome to stop in and yell at me or say nice things. It's whatever you want to do. Either one, I'm pretty good with it. Hey, yep, because it is her drawing. It's like legitimately. Definitely. I also had one from, oh man. I blank on her name. was a really wonderful taco
Just
drawing.
ruin their name.
No, I can't remember. She was a girl who did salt for us. And she's very, very quiet. Hi, Angie, just for the record. Hi, Angie. And whoever there is watching. So, yep. Okay. All right. So that's how you got to Parkview.
So I got to Parkview.
Okay. That's cool.
That's
just
cool.
for the record, we had a home computer, but it was not good.
Was it like AOL with the little yellow guy running?
I don't really.
It had
remember.
to be an AOL because
I don't know. Dad, because he was into computer science and he's a database administrator. Yeah, don't ask me what that means because Mark DeWard is a smart guy and loves the computer stuff. And yeah, he's tried to explain it to me a couple of different times. Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
Get a different job, Mark.
All right. Man, let's figure some things here. Why don't you tell me about your favorite biblical figure? Also, just for the record, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to just put them in the live chat and we'll answer them. Anything's on the table, just okay. Well, tell Meg we've got it's up. So you can just tell her I appreciate it. And I keep that stuff and it goes up in my office somewhere. Until somebody cleans everything out, and then I don't know where it goes.
Just say it until Sarah cleans it up.
No, because sometimes Lindsay will do that too, and Anyways, okay. So tell me, who is your favorite biblical figure?
My favorite biblical figure, be a cop out if I said Jesus.
It's the only correct answer.
I mean, yeah. I mean, but
just kidding.
I really like Jacob, which also means heel grabber because he was grabbing Esau's heel. The reason I like Jacob is just because he's not a perfect dude at all. You clearly see him mess up. Him and his mom get into a little bit of trouble, tricking his dad out of the blessing.
Yep.
And then you just see this man go through so much craziness. His wife gets switched out because of his evil father-in-law.
Is that guy evil or is he just conniving? I mean, in that particular moment, right? Like he has multiple daughters. And he's got one he's pretty confident will never get married.
He worked for so long for Rachel. Wasn't it Rachel?
Yes.
And then he gets the one that says that
Leah, she's homely. Very homely.
What does it say that she wasn't easy on the eyes? Isn't that the way in the Bible saying that you're not that very cute? But yeah, Jacob, you just see him he wrestles with God, and ultimately his story becomes a really great dude. But Jacob, that's my guy.
That's your boy?
That's my boy, Jacob, the heel grabber.
Abraham, here we go. Okay, just settle down. 3 visitors, Sodom and Gomorrah, birth of Isaac, death of Sarah.
For you guys who are on here still, who was your favorite biblical character? Drop it in the live chat. Allie, we know you're here. Drop it. Or is that Angie?
It's Angie.
Angie, we want to know who your biblical character is.
Let's see. Right. Okay. I'm really close.
You're really trying to find out what it said about her appearance.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. It said something. Let's see.
So that whole story is pretty interesting. And
yeah, he marries 2 sisters. It's very strange.
Uh-huh. I don't know. I'm gonna just mess up.
Moses, because he was really old when he finally got it.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, Moses was super old when he finally started getting it. It's okay, Mike.
It's Jacob who ends up with the
Rachel. Spence put Rachel.
Rachel. Yep. So it's Jacob. Jacob ends up with marrying Leah and Rachel.
Yeah, Leah and Rachel.
And your boy, who's the other one you were saying? Jacob's your boy, right?
Yep, Jacob.
He ends up and such a rough go round.
Yeah. And he's
Poor Leah here.
And he gets a little limp because, God or Jesus, whoever he was wrestling with, touched his hip.
Yep.
Came out of socket, and then he got a little swagger walk.
I'm trying to find out.
And then Lauren Spence says she doesn't know who her favorite is. That's okay.
There's only one correct answer, and that's Jesus. But
I mean,
just kidding. Oh, Leah had weak eyes or delicate. So, yeah.
I don't know what that means. Maybe she needed glasses.
We could find out. But anyways, yeah. So, okay.
What about you, Mike? Who is your favorite biblical figure?
Favorite biblical figure? Man, I feel like it's such a cop out, but I do think David is pretty. I mean, that's a pretty dope story, right? Like he kind of like does all of the parts of humanity basically, right? Like there's that like youthful, like he's young and dumb and he doesn't know, and he's like, I'm gonna go defend God's honor, like let's go, and kills Goliath, and then it's like he gets all these blessings really early. He not handling it overly well, but not bad. And then, he's basically on the run for a period of time, and like hardship, he bears a bunch of hardship, and then things go really well and he screws up, and then things kind of go downhill, but he, walks well after that particular moment and that sort of stuff. So it's just one of those things where David's kind of like a really good one. The other one that I've ended up reading about a lot in the last 3 years has been Abraham.
Okay.
And he's pretty cool because there's a lot of that where he's getting called out of, the land of his fathers. I've been here since I was 2. I'm 33 now. And I was sitting, Sarah and I and Ronnie were meeting with a guy, and one of the things like Sarah said before, was just like, oh, I don't know how you could like live here your whole life and not want to go somewhere else. And I'm like, all my family's here. Like it's a big reason, like to end up picking up and getting out of that kind of like that family where it's security, right? Mm-hmm. Like you think in old times, like you didn't have like the government, you didn't have like policemen to kind of protect you and all that sort of stuff. It's a little more of the Wild West, right? Where like people are just shooting off guns left and right, and you got to protect yourself. So like not having that family structure where you're like you and your brothers are like, we're protecting us and our own, to go somewhere where it's pretty crazy. But he's also full of like, it's the best. Not once, but twice, he goes to a place and he's like, this isn't my wife, this is my sister, which is like a half truth, which is kind of gross, but kind of funny because it happened at the same time. Everybody's like, she's super attractive, I will marry her. And then God is like, no, knock that off. God made a promise and you can't do that. And they're all like, what are you doing? And he does it a second. I mean, it's just, he's just very much like a human person who makes dumb decisions all the time. So it's kind of nice to have a hero that is as flawed as I am as a person.
Good stuff.
So, yeah.
So the next question is, what keeps you grounded in your faith?
I feel like there's a lot of different things for me. I think a lot of times what I'm listening to can really help keep me grounded. What I'm reading, my wife specifically can help me do that. So it's like a couple of different things. Like the way I would tell you, like if you get in my car and I've been listening to just what I would say secular music, right? So this is 99.7 or 102.9, or, you know, even some of the sports stuff, 106.3, and that, like, and I know if you're a young person, you're like, who listens to FM radio? Like, just put your phone on, which I'm there now. And so now it's podcasts and other stuff. But when my music kind of strays away from like the stuff that is glorifying to God, that is edifying to a person, I can see myself starting to feel that, like, oh, it's easier to do this thing. Oh, it's, you know, it's easier to be a little bit mean in this particular case and that sort of stuff. You know, and then, you know, my wife constantly keeps me grounded and just like challenging me to be a better person, a better man, and a better follower of Jesus. That helps out a lot.
Yeah.
And then what I'm reading, if I am reading, I'm doing good. If I'm not, I typically am struggling. So those are kind of my things. How about for you? What are some things that keep you grounded within your own faith?
Right. I think the biggest one is just right now I have younger children. And I think someone said it's not what kids see you doing, it's what they catch you doing. Mm-hmm. And that's just like that's one of the biggest things for me, especially having a male child. What are the things that I'm setting for him? What are the examples that he sees? And what are my habits? So Isaiah is one of those big things for me. And it's my daughter as well, just because when she gets married, or if she chooses not to, whatever, I want her to know what are those rhythms. What does it look like to be a man that is reading and praying for his family? And I think just also, again, for my wife, but also for unbelieving family members, it's easy to say that you believe in Jesus, but my family that doesn't believe keeps me grounded, because I want them to look at me and look at my life and say, you know what, there must be something to this God thing for this young man to continue pursuing. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely,
those are some things that keep me grounded in my faith.
Okay. So just kind of piggyback on that, what are some spiritual rhythms? So spiritual rhythms are something that we typically like qualify as like reading the Bible or praying, or you know, maybe doing some fasting or that sort of stuff. So when we talk about spiritual rhythms, that's what we're talking about. So what are some of your spiritual rhythms that you are trying to do, that you are actively running after?
Yeah. Right now I read a psalm and a proverb usually a day. Right now it's just been mostly a psalm, but just psalms, they bend between lament and praise. Lament meaning pouring out your feelings to the Lord, hurt feelings, and then praise to God. Just because you can get in, what I've noticed being 28, living this long life, is you can really either miss God just because everything in your life is going right. So you really don't think about reading a psalm of lament and just really beginning to recount those blessings and walking through your life and saying, God, you know, hey, thank you for this house that I have. Thank you for your steadfast love. And just that's been something I've been really stuck on, is like steadfast means unmovable. It's firm. And God's love for us is firm and unmovable. And also just those psalms of praise, like even when everything is going right, we can still praise God in that. So that's what keeps me grounded. And then the Proverbs, man, that's just
no the verbs.
It's always solid wisdom. So I'm a 28-year-old man, so you can imagine foot and mouth syndrome. So I need
I got wisdom. It. Yeah. No.
So yeah, what about you? What are some rhythms that you are doing in your life right now?
Typically, like I try and get up and do a couple of different things to try and get a little. We've been going through Hebrews and posting those things, and so trying to work through some of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm following along in that sort of sense. And then on top of that, when I get to this building, one of the things that I really love doing, and I've gotten more of doing this just because I like it, is I go to the chapel and I walk and I pray. Mm-hmm. And I really like doing that just because I like moving. Yeah. Just as a person, like it helps me to focus in on what I'm really trying to do. And so like, you know, when I'm practicing a sermon or I'm getting myself ready or whatever, that sort of thing, I end up in the chapel just wandering, like incessantly walking around. And so when I'm home, it's a little bit harder to kind of do that because I don't have as much of a space, or it's warm outside, or I want to sleep in because it's my day off and that sort of stuff. And so rhythm sometimes can be, difficult to keep in that sort of sense. But I really enjoy that. Car rides, personal, like on my own car rides, I love to pray and do that, or turn on my Bible app and make it read to me. That's really fun to do. That's kind of one of the things I like to do. That way, it's not. I understand the beauty and then necessity of having like a separate, like really clearly defined time to read the Bible and that sort of stuff. And so I attempt to do that, but I'm not a planner, and I'm not like that. So for me, it's more of these spontaneous moments of going away to pray, or getting something read, or doing this sort of. I'm a little more spontaneous in that sort of like rhythm. So my rhythm looks a little more like, okay, well, this day I prayed a lot, and this day I prayed a little bit, and this day I read a lot, and this day I read a little bit, and you get a lot of these different kind of moving parts for me. So the rhythms are a little bit. I'm not as good as like, I wake up at 6 a.m. and I read, and then I pray, and then it's a little bit more of like, I'm up at like 7:30 and I shower and I get in the car and I pray, and then I get here and I read something, and then I pray, and then I come back and I read a little bit more, and I do this and that. And so my rhythm can get a little bit goofy.
Yeah. But I stole one of your rhythms, like, because you actually do walk and listen to your Bible.
Oh yeah.
And I actually stole that from you. What I usually do is I go into the parking ramp in Iowa City, and I'll play my Bible app and like walk, because I'm like, I think it was one day during a meeting, I like caught you in there. I'm like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, listening to the one thing I've actually got to see you do this, but if you could is, how do you handle conflict as a Christian?
Man, sometimes well, sometimes poorly. That's the main thing. I'm incredibly blessed. If you guys have listened to me talk at all about my mother, you'll hear me yell that Becky DeWard is a saint. And the reason I do this is two. The first one is I grew up in a time when people would say like your mama jokes. And what I found out is a lot of my buddies like would get really hurt if you said mean things about their mom. And I didn't want that for my own mom. So when things like that would start to happen, I would just basically stop and just yell, Becky DeWard is a saint, and just not stop. And so it threw people off. But the second thing is my mom taught me a lot of these really biblical kind of principles. And when it comes to conflict, there's a lot of things that I would say, like she asks questions, or I feel like I've learned from her. The question that I think is the best is like, is this relationship worth like enough to basically swallow my pride? And the biblical principle here, right, is that Jesus died for my sins. So like every relationship that I have I should be able to look at that and be like, wow, Jesus, you forgave my sins. I can forgive this person. Like I'm going to value this relationship enough that even if we're not going to be friends. So like, let's say a real life example. I had a buddy that I was pretty close with. We used to, the NC Dubs football games would come out every year, and he would buy it like on the day or day of, and then he would come over and we would play that game like all night, and then whatever. We were pretty close. And it was my freshman year of college. He went to Iowa. I was at Central, and man, he called me and he just put me on blast. I have zero idea really where it came from and like what happened. And there are a couple of things, like I just remember, like in those particular moments and events, you have two options. You want to defend yourself, or you can just try and find a way, to make the situation better. And that's, I think, what Jesus says. And actually, it feeds into my talk for this Sunday, if you watch it, where Jesus is talking, defend yourself and require justice from this kind of like, oh, they're putting me on blast. Like, no, you've done stuff wrong and you haven't been perfect. And I don't know where you're coming from all of this. But the answer is like, okay, well, tell me what's wrong. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And then I remember because he hung up on me. And it was one of those things where it was like, hey, we did this thing where we bought this thing together and you never paid me and you just weren't very good. And so I made sure that I went and I got money. And like the next night I drove from Pella to Iowa City and I knew where he lived. And so I went to his dorm room and I just slid the money under because he basically said, we're done. And he was home. And so he saw that and he came out. He actually went and got me. And we talked in like the stairwell. And it's like, dude, I'm just like, I'm sorry. I really don't know what's going on. But I care enough about our relationship that I don't want you to feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about conflict, you have the option of fight or flight. And Jesus says, not really. You have the option to forgive. Now that being said, like, you don't have to be like, oh, like you were yelling at me about something I didn't even do. And so I'm really sorry. And let me put myself in a situation to let you get after me again. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying forgive and forget. I don't think that's a biblical like stance, really. To forgive is what you are called to do. Mm-hmm. And so in that sort of sense, as you look at conflict and that sort of stuff, like, I'll just ask you the standard question. Have you ever met conflict with like really anger and like frustration and really had it go well? I haven't. I mean, like in a lot of cases, what happens when I get that way, had it go well? I haven't. I mean, like in a lot of cases, what happens when I get that way is I say stuff I regret later. And I do stuff that like I hate about myself. And so when we get into those conflicts, when we start to view this and it's like, oh, hey, like Ronnie didn't communicate correctly with me. Well, I have an option. I can forgive him and then approach that situation as like, hey, dude, like, you didn't send me the text. I didn't get the info. Like, and when that happens, it made me feel this way, right? Or I could be like, you idiot, like you didn't sell me the stuff. And so I look like a dummy out here and you can't, like, there's a biblical approach to it where I'm treating Ronnie's treating me as a person who matters because Jesus Christ died for our sins and God made us in the image, okay, of his own. So we all like bear him at a certain level. So that means like, when we treat people poorly, and the book of James does a great job of explaining this, like you praise God with the same mouth that you curse out other people. Yeah. That's not okay, guys. And so in that same sort of way, as we look at that conflict, like it's about when I screw up and I empathize well with people and that it hurts me. We had a family here in the last couple of months where like, I just know through my actions or inactions, like I wounded people. And so when we had a sit down, like it's imperative that I apologize in such a way that I offer no defense of myself. And that's just because I know that I screwed up. And when you're like, oh, I haven't screwed up, the question that you have to ask is the relationship worth it for you to basically maintain that relationship? Mm-hmm. So like, if you're like, man, I really love Ronnie, but I like that relationship, but it's not important for me to like really keep it intact. Well, you might handle that a little bit differently. It's important enough to me that I don't want to lose that relationship. So if he has seen something that I've done wrong or perceived it and I don't perceive it as wrong, then I'm going to think, okay, in his perspective, what does this really look like? What did I really say? What did I really do? And then try and respond in such a way as to build a bridge rather than burn it down. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
What do you think? How do you handle conflict as a Christian? And the second thing is I would say, I wish I handled them all that way. And I was really good at it all the time, but I'm very clearly not. And so every once in a while, the blind squirrel finds a nut. And that is me. I am just trying to seek after the example, that I've seen other people of faith put in front of me. And I think is echoed through Jesus's responses to questions and his teachings, and that's all I'm trying to do. So by no means do you think, just go ask my wife if I do this correctly all the time. But anyways, yeah, how do you handle conflict?
First, I blow things up out of proportion, and that's honest.
That's good.
I'm a stuffer.
Okay.
So
yep.
For me, what stuffing means is how I handle conflict is if I'm offended by something, I will see the conflict, I will play it out in my head, and then realize that, hey, somebody may not understand why I feel offended. So then I just choose to say nothing at all and keep those emotions real deep, and then they come out, which never works.
There we go.
Oh, there we are.
I'm sorry, guys. It bothered me. Anyways,
Half of
37 minutes into it.
Never works.
There we go.
Oh, there we are.
I'm sorry, guys. It bothered me. Anyways,
Half of
37 minutes into it, I have to fix it so Ronnie's not off to the side.
Not half of my arm is missing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We
so
want to see all of Ronnie.
I'm a stuffer, and I'm working on that in explaining my emotions when they happen. But now one of the biggest things is Doug Schillinger. Anytime you hear him preach about forgiveness or sin, he always says that he is the biggest sinner, and he puts himself in the front of that. And until we make a big deal of our sin, then we're not able to really forgive others. We have to make a big deal. So for me, I take the time to really sit down and try to perceive, like, what did I do to this person, or what didn't I say? A lot of the times it's what you didn't say, or sometimes what you did say.
So it's the sin of omission. Okay, what you didn't do.
Pretty much.
Okay,
So
that's a sin that can happen, right? I didn't do the right thing, and that was a sin, right? Or I didn't do this thing, and that was a sin. So it's
Yeah. So I have to do that, and then really just make that big deal out of my sin. And then I'm really trying to focus on not being prideful. If we're being honest, when we're mad and we're not ready to forgive, it's because we want to be mad. We want to be angry, and we want to be offended. And that sounds super crazy, but I remember one time my wife and I had gotten an argument, and I knew I can forgive very easily and quickly. And with my wife, it's not that she can't. Sometimes she needs to process, and women and men, we process things very different. And I remember just holding on to it, and I literally could have apologized. And I remember just like God breaking me of that. And I just went and I'm like, hey, I apologize for saying this and this, and I'm sorry. And when you learn how to handle conflict well, it allows the other person, your spouse or your friends, to really look and say, hey, the way that this person handles conflict is different. And so it's easier to forgive. So for me, like with my wife, when I feel like, hey, you never apologize first, when I'm able to handle conflict well, it allows her to come to me and say, hey, I noticed that you were offended or your mood changed.
Right? If I say something like this, Ronnie, you always belittle me when you come into a room. Right? There is no way in the entire world that Ronnie, every time he enters a room, finds some new and impressive way to make Mike feel less of a person. So initially, like, the statement gets lost in translation. So like a better way to say that is, Ronnie, sometimes when you walk into the room, okay, you do some things that make me feel bad. You make me feel less of a man. And that would be like, okay, right now at certain points, he may still disagree with that, but because it's not an absolute, he's not going to argue about whether or not it's an absolute, because it's not. But if you say something like, like if Ronnie says something, well, Mike, you never tell me what a good friend and youth pastor I am, right? Well, there's no way I have never done that. And I would be like, I think you're wrong. Yeah. And our argument is not about the resolution of the actual conflict, which would be like, hey, I'm feeling underappreciated from you. Yeah. So like when you hear your friends, I'm the biggest arguer in the whole world. When you hear your friends say like never and always, your initial reaction is be like, I don't always do that. How could you say I always do this thing or I never do this thing? I don't think you know me at all. And so in that sort of respect, I would tell you that's a little something I learned from Mom. I don't know if that's a biblical sort of principle, but I do know that it's a good communication one. That I learned from Mom, and keep the main thing the main thing. So another thing I would always say is, just because you can remember past incidents does not mean that the conversation then is worthwhile to bring those up. So like a statement would be like, like the conversation then, you remember 2 weeks ago when you didn't do that, and 3 weeks ago you like this, and then 4 weeks ago, and it's like we have like 4 different things. So in that sort of sense, keep whatever the main argument here is. Hey, I feel slighted when this happens. Those are all really important things about conflict and about managing them, because those keep the main argument the main thing. So like a case in point here, right, is kneeling for the national anthem. At a certain point, right, people thought that this was about disrespecting the flag. And so instead of actually having what the purpose behind what they were doing as going forward, people were misconstruing what the actual protest was. And so people got upset about the wrong thing. In the same way, our arguments and the way that we have conflict, it's important to make sure that what we're doing and saying doesn't dilute what we're trying to say. So that like that sort of a deal, I think, is really important. Not to say anything about kneeling, whether positive or negative. I think everybody has that ability to do that, and they should practice their voice and use it. But what I will tell you is be careful when you speak, because all of our words matter. And so in that sort of, when we're having that conflict, and the main thing.
Absolutely. And Dave Foster actually said something in our last meeting is in conflict. One of the next things, if you are upset with someone after you've forgiven them, he was talking about praying for them, but also praying for God to bless them. And that was super interesting, is because in that conflict, as you're forgiving, you're praying for God to continue to bless them and also reveal what's going on. And I just thought that's like set my mind somewhere, just because like you have a brother, I have a brother, and
I do.
Brothers are interesting relationships. And I remember being actively upset with mine, and just it's so opposite. It's countercultural to pray for God to bless someone that you are actively upset with, but you're in the middle of forgiveness. But that was something that's been
it's actually a biblical mandate that Jesus gives us, to pray for those who persecute you.
Yeah,
like it's hard to hate somebody that you're praying for good things to happen to them.
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
And in a lot of cases, it's the best thing that you can do for people. And that, okay, well, hopefully we're doing good. If I ever offend anybody, please, forever and ever, just like come talk to me. I don't mean to offend. And I say a lot of things that maybe are like, maybe it's hard to hear, or might, just because of your situation or sort of thing, like hurts when I say that. Like if you're somebody who got super offended one way or the other about kneeling for the flag, like, I'm sorry. I love everybody, and I want everybody to get what the message is out and that sort of thing. So say the thing that you want to say. But if I ever say anything ever, I want to give me a chance to respond well to you. So just come talk to me. So let's talk about, let's see. Reminder, any questions you guys have, ask anything you want. I'm going to say everything's on the table as far as you want to know. So if you want to ask weird dating related questions, I will field that. If you don't want to, don't. If you want to do something else, go for it. Man. Tell me about a hard season in your life and what you did. And what did you do, and what was the end result?
A hard season in my life.
Yeah. Yesterday.
Yeah, right. Yesterday. I was about 22. Connie and I were engaged. We had broken up. I hate it.
Wait, you were engaged and broken up? I don't know if that happened.
We called the engagement off.
Okay, there we
broke
go.
Up.
Okay.
2 parts to break. Yeah.
We stopped dating, but we're still engaged. That's weird. Don't do that. It's weird.
It's uncomfortable.
Okay.
But yeah, so we had ended up breaking up, and there was a lot of anxiety and depression I was going through at 21, 22 years old. And then I, again, being a stuffer, don't always communicate my emotions or when things are hard for me. So I kept a lot of things in, and I was also struggling with, did I want to follow Christ? Did I believe that these things are true, or was I just doing something that was taught to me? I also was struggling because I didn't know. I was still questioning my sexuality at one point as well. And I felt like, if I was questioning this, like the God I believed in, when I was praying to him, why wouldn't you remove the thing that I was asking you? And so there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of things I had to go through in life and allow God to work out. And I remember I ended up purchasing a new car, and talk about trying to purchase an idol. I went to the dealership and bought this car, and I thought like, hey, I won't have this depression and I won't be so anxious if I just make this really big purchase. And I did, and I ended up I remember it was like late August, and I had this emotional breakdown in this car, and I remember I was just not wanting to be here anymore, and I just ended up praying in that car, and I would just remember telling God, I'm like, hey, if you're real, you're going to have to show me that you're real. And I wasn't like, I'm not saying like, hey, God, make the sun go up and the moon come down type of sign, but like actually show me that you're real. My dad, and becoming a member of this church, the Wheaton Christian Church, Center Church. But also in that, I remember the friends and the influences in my life were not positive ones. And it's not saying that you can't have friends that are Christians, but when you're a new Christian, you need to have people around you that are helping you to move towards Christ, because I think the Bible says that bad company corrupts good morals, or something of that sort, like Monday through Saturday. And I remember praying to God, I'm like, you know, if you want me to continue following you, you need to help me find friends that are going to help me be conducive to this walk. And I remember it was this guy named Lewis and Jarvis, like literally after prayer, they're like, dude, you always come to church, but you slip out the back and we don't see you into the next prayer or to church. And they were like, hey, we have this friend group, and it's called the Young Adults Group, and you should come hang out. And I got on this group me, and like, it was just crazy how God had answered that prayer in that community of believers and friends that I ended up having. And thus, you know, getting into more Christian community, and just ultimately the Lord showing me that he was breaking me of codependency and looking to other people for my problems, but in just showing me to come to him. And that was that hard season of really just being broken of old idols and habits and depending really just on him.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
What about you? Tell us about a hard season in your life.
Like, I just feel like I have lots of these little like hard things that happen in my life. I say they're little, but they're fairly big, and to people they're big. And you know, to me, I would say like 2 days ago, I had just really rough. There's a lot of places in my life that like I'm in, and like I'm clearly in, but I'm a guy who like very much values being a part of the team, and like there's a pride part of me that like wants everybody to view me in this sort of way, and you know, and so there's just some really hard stuff, and I just remember like, man, being in my car and just feeling really like emotional, which is not, it was just one of those like things, and it took like prayer, and I'm praying to God about my heart and about where I'm at. And, you know, having to call like a dude who's discipling me, who's really taking his time and being like, dude, what am I doing here? Like, I'm trying to process what's happening here, and I don't know. Just tell me whatever based off of what I'm saying. Like, am I okay? Am I not okay? What do you think? And it was just, I think it's really important for us as we walk into those hard situations, and they are hard, that you have multiple people that are there that you can just bounce stuff off of. Like, another one was like my freshman year of college. It was brutal that first 5 months or whatever, 4 months, awful. And what the main thing that was the worst thing about that was that I had cut myself off from all of my community. I was like, I'm going to be, you know, just the football guy and football. Then, man, I was awful. And that time was just dark and painful. And since that moment, like I can tell you, there's been hard seasons and there have been hard days and stuff like that, but nothing that ever matches the length and depth and time, because I've since surrounded myself with people that I feel comfortable at being like, hey, I'm dealing with this right now. Can you tell me, is this right? Is this wrong? Like, you know me, you know who I am. Like, tell me the thing. And so if that's anything, as I can give you advice about, like as you're walking into college or you're walking into high school, or you're walking into junior high, like take that time and get those people, whether it be adult leaders that we have here or family members or just church members, like find that. One of the best guys that I've had in my life is Keith Jones. And he was a believer and he was a part of this church. And he was wonderful. And he had coffee with me like every day, not every day, that would be weird, but like once a week, all through high school for the most part. And then was always just a guy that I could just call, like, I just need this. We'd play cribbage and talk and that sort of stuff. And so just having a lot of different people in your life that you can bounce a lot of this stuff off of is really important, to not feeling like you're a crazy person. Because there are a bunch of people who believe this stuff. There's a bunch of people who know that this is true and will help guide you in the ways that you should go. And so that sort of stuff. So maybe a good question off of what I've been saying is, who influences your faith today and how?
Who influences my faith today? Man.
Again, any questions, if you got them, please write them. I'm just going to check my phone to make sure that we're not getting them. You just answer.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Right now,
kind of
influences my faith. Right now, I wouldn't say there are any people per se that are big influencers, but who influenced my faith in the past is my mom has a twin sister, my aunt Jeremy, and the reason I would say she influences, I would say still influences my faith is there was a season in time where she wasn't going to church, and then it was just my cousins that would go to church with their grandma. My aunt is married, so her mother-in-law would take their kids to church. And it just like her life transformed. And I just have a very close relationship with her, like to the point where my aunt would be like, hey, you don't have to ask to come over. You just need to know on Sunday morning, you were up by 7 and in the car by 9, and we're at church. And just to see, like, no matter like sick, not feeling well, or happy, upset, whatever was going on in our family, like my aunt was always at church and like always serving and just super faithful. So my aunt was someone that was just very influential in my faith, and just, her and Connie, my wife, has been someone that's been influential in my faith, just because my wife didn't believe in anything. She wasn't raised in a church. She did not go to church at all. And just to see a lot of the times how God can just take normal, ordinary people and just really begin to transform them. And like my wife is just a walking testimony. And she's one of those big people in my life that influences.
Shouldn't say your wife is a bigger person.
Her faith is bigger
there
than
you
mine.
go. All right.
So yeah, she influences my faith to continue going.
Anybody got one? Any single person? We're just gonna awkwardly sit here for a little bit.
No, we're not. We're moving on to the next
We're
question.
Moving on.
Mike, who do you aspire to be like?
Who do I aspire to be like? Jesus. Nailed it. Nailed it.
We are all being transformed into the image of Christ.
You know, I have a lot of different guys that I really look up to, and so one of the guys, Aaron Goodrich, Dave Foster, Doug Schillinger, kind of a hodgepodge of those guys would be, I think, pretty wonderful for me. My own father goes in there. I think my dad is a wonderful, godly man, and I love him very much. And if I ended up very similar to him, that I would be doing well. And And so, but it's like a bunch of different guys, and it changes. When I was younger, I used to really want to be like Brett Favre. And that was the first time I learned that the guys in the NFL, the guys that I thought were really cool, were really not. And I still think Brett Favre is pretty cool, but not. And I still think Brett Favre is pretty cool, but he's just a sinful man who does sinful things.
Yeah.
And he played football both really well and terribly all at once. So it stopped being who I was trying to model my life after. And it started to be Aaron Goodrich, who was my Bible study leader, Doug Schillinger, who was my youth leader, or youth pastor at that time. It's me. It's my spouse. Whoa, man. So it's a lot of those guys, and it just keeps going the more I go. And I'm trying to follow after Christ as the men in my life that I, look up to are following after him. And so that's, that I think that's the way. So Sarah asked, and so if anybody else has other questions, love to hear it. What is the hardest part of youth ministry and the most rewarding?
Yeah. The hardest part of youth ministry, for
honesty on, baby.
Honesty.
Don't word vomit everywhere, but
the hardest part of youth ministry is when the student is participating in the Sunday morning worship gathering, like the experience of donuts and says, I don't think Ronnie, I think your shirt is cool. Thanks, Sarah. I thought
way to get completely off topic. Yep.
So yeah, when you have a student that's coming to like your Sunday morning worship gathering, so that's experience for you guys on the east side, it's Donuts and Jesus, or the Spot, or J Life, or SI. And
all of that is going to get changed.
Which is all of it. But when a kid's parent is not super involved in the church, so it's hard because for students, you guys are super formidable. It's not even a word. You're super formidable.
Okay. That means different. You're saying they're very pliable. Like they can be molded, moldable.
Molded, movable. But what I'm trying to say is
when means like you're like hard to beat.
Oh my gosh. Anyways,
okay.
When you have a student whose parent is not super malleable, yeah. Well, the child is not really.
Thanks.
I wouldn't say held accountable, but when the parent is not actively pursuing their faith, in a certain point, that the student is kind of like, well, if my parent isn't taking this serious, why should I take this serious? And why should I come to youth group? And why should I read my Bible? That's a hard part of youth group because honestly, Mike would say the same thing. Is like, we love serving you guys. Like, and that's honestly what Mike and our job, that's our job. Like, we have the interns, and it's not that we're better. It just means that we're more of a servant. Like, we have to serve the interns well. We have to serve the students well and your guys' families. So when the parents aren't involved and behind them in pursuing Jesus just as hard as a student, that can be super hard to do student ministry because it's just inconsistent. One of the rewarding things is, again, it's seeing students do it. I love doing this job. Mike, I know you love doing it, but last year going to camp, my kid is a 7th grader going into 8th grade, and it was her first year actually being a part of student ministries and watching her and her friends accept Christ at camp. Like, I was like a horrible mess, like crying, and it was crazy. So one of the rewarding things is like seeing my own kid come to Christ and then coming back home and being able to baptize like 5 of my students, including my own child. So those are just those rewarding things where you see a kid make a commitment to Christ where their parents aren't there and it's just them. And it's just like, man, and to see a student walk that out and like, it's crazy. Like for me, one of my students, like Keontae, like I was hanging out with him and my kids yesterday, and he like asked me, he's like, so when is Bible study happening again? And this kid is super busy with baseball. And when a student asks me,
like, whenever you want it.
What do you mean? I'm like,
that's always my answer. You tell me when.
I was like, we can Zoom every day and have Bible studies. So when a student chooses Christ for themselves and they continue to serve, like, man, that's the most rewarding thing. It makes it like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of that. I think the hardest part of youth ministry is I'm gonna echo a lot of that. I think the hardest part of youth ministry is watching kids make painful decisions.
Yeah.
Whether that be to walk away from their faith, or whether that to be like, just, I think I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to go do this thing. And like, as an adult, I've been there, and I know it's not going to end well. And the people that it's the hardest part of working with kids and working with you guys who are watching this is I absolutely want what's best for you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Not what's best for me, not what is even best for our ministry, what's best for you and Jesus together. And I mean, like, to me, I would say that's always the thing. It's the same thing. Like, the best thing for you and for me is Jesus. When we really truly accept and hold on to Jesus, that's the best thing. And so watching kids get it, man, that is the most rewarding thing. Watching kids get it and go out there and share it and like get after it because your friends matter. Mm-hmm. It's, like with my particular job right now, I probably get to hang out less than I would like with kids. And so I probably burn the lamp on a couple of different ends in order to get that to happen. And but I would say that's my favorite. Any other questions here? We're at the hour 4 mark, so I think we'll shut her down. If you don't have any questions, if you are waiting to be the last person with a question, this is your time. Like, there's not going to be another time. Oh, here we go. Oh, Rachel, how can students best support their youth group leaders and serve them? Oh, man. Good question, Rachel. So your specific youth group leader, what I would tell you is get to know them. That's one of the best things. They're here because they care about you. And one of the hardest things as an adult leader is being worried about whether kids care about you caring about them, which is a weird thing to think about. Like, it's when the relationship transfers from like where I'm the only one contacting somebody to them contacting me, that's a great way to serve. Even if it's like, hey, when's Bible study? Or, hey, how can I, like asking the questions that you would ask anybody else. Hey, what can I do? Like, we're going to do Bible study. Can I offer my house? Can I bring something to eat? Can I bring something to drink? I know that you guys don't have money, so that might be a conversation to have with mom and dad, but it's like that. Or like, if you know that they're going to go on a mission trip or something like that, having your family maybe send some money, some support to them, that sort of a thing can really be a helpful thing. I would argue that the best way that you can serve them is to care about them in the way that you would care about your friend. Now, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden now I'm telling you like, hey, on a Friday night, call your youth leader and go, do something just you guys. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, your youth leader might be kind of weirded out, but ultimately, like, they're going to be really appreciative of that. Even if they say no or they're busy or whatever, but like doing that sort of like connecting with them, man, inviting them into the ministry that you are currently doing. So like when you're hanging out with your friends, right? Like, we're all supposed to have an account for our faith. And hopefully we don't all hang out with only Christians. So when you invite them into that, so my best example is this, right? So Aaron Goodrich was my Bible study leader in high school. And one of the things we had to do when we wanted to play video games, is we had to get 16 individuals together, 4 different Xboxes, 4 different TVs, a LAN box, and 4 different Ethernet. Its picture is Denki from, hey, I've heard of that one. I haven't watched it, but I have heard of it a lot. I think they're heroes in an academy, but I don't know. Anyways, well, I love it. It's up. And if you ever draw more, they just go other places.
That's a good question.
And so, like, what we would do is we would just invite him into this group of like 15 individuals. He became one of the guys. And so as we started to do that, right, now our friends, my friends who are like football guys, are now spending time that they would never have ever spent with my youth leader, okay, in that same sort of environment. And they watched Aaron live a godly life as we played murder, Halo, whatever. And he was bad, but he kept playing and like was really upbeat and like really fun and funny and those sorts of things. And so, well, yeah, I already know that. So, but I will allow that, Angie and Meg, because I don't have enough stuff on my walls. So that would be mine. Do you have anything you would add?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch that question just a little bit from leader to how to support your youth group.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the way that you can support your youth group, for me, I would say just being actively a part of the group. Not like it's one group, not like it's one thing to be physically present there, but also being mentally present in group.
Like locked in.
Like
it's good.
Like locked in, like actually, like man, like when worship is going on, instead of being like, hey, this is my time, Mike is not paying attention or Ronnie's back is turned, I'm gonna Instagram like these Birkenstocks and like get mom to buy these when I get home. But like, hey, actively being a part of worship, or actively like, hey, when we have like the ski trip or something like that, and like you might be like embarrassed, like I really want to invite Mike to youth group, but that's awkward. But man, like the ski trip is coming up, like actively being a part of like those events and saying like, hey, I'm going to pick a friend and nail in this day. I'm like, hey, I know it's July right now or it's June, but my church does a ski trip every week at Martin Luther King weekend.
Which we do.
And
we'll
like,
get all those dates out to you. They are decided.
Yeah.
And unless something goofy happens, we're going.
Yeah. And I think those are just ways to take advantage of being a part of your youth group, because that's how you support your youth leader, because it's like, man, you're being discipled, and now you're showing, hey, like as a Christian, this is you're bringing them into that sphere, and hopefully they do accept Christ. You never know. It's a seed being planted, but it's being a part of that group, and it's showing your leader like, hey, man, you're not just speaking to me on Wednesdays and Sundays, and like it goes in one ear and out the other one. It's showing that, hey, what you're saying to me, I'm actively applying that to my life. I'm actively applying that in my friend group. So I think that's a way to support your leaders in your group, is being actively, physically, mentally apart. But yeah, man, we are at the hour. Do
the hour 10.
Do your announcement thing.
Yeah, we do. We as a youth group, we do like Turtles. They're pretty cool. Animes that I enjoy or have watched, Dragon Ball Z. That's one that I've definitely watched, and I think we have some guys here when Dragon Ball Z was coming out, I was like in elementary school, junior high. So like I was hoofing it back home to watch Toonami after school, which makes me sound like a nerd because I was, and I loved it. And let's see, I still enjoy the Pokemon.
Death Note is such a good one.
I've never watched that one.
So great. You can watch it on Hulu.
Don't have the Hulu. What is lame? The turtle? Or Dragon Ball Z? Or Pokemons? Or Death Note. Yeah, we said like lots of them.
Yeah, but
other than that, yeah.
It's Father's Day on Sunday. Get your father a tie.
Yep, and come to youth group. Get your stuff done, and then give him a break.
Yeah,
lovingly come to youth group and say, I love you so much. Have a date night with mom. Or I love you so much. Go just enjoy 2 hours where I'm busy and eat and do all this sort of thing. Dragon Ball Z is not lame.
She didn't call mine lame.
I know she called mine lame, but mine is super old now.
Yeah, it is super old. But
it's like a lot of people's gateway anime.
Gateway.
Right?
Yeah. Peace.
Yeah, anyways.
See you guys on Sunday.
We'll see you guys. Hopefully you'll be there.
At church, don't forget.
We have live church. Stay in your vehicles, social distance, wear masks, but show up. We'd love to have you. I'll be here. Ronnie will be here.
I'll be here with my family.
Anyways.
Peace out.
All right, deuces. We're ending the stream now.